All right, guys, we just saw a parade of celestial events. Most of you guys know about the blood moon, but I'm going to show you today that there was other things that's been happening in the heavens that's all been coinciding and is kicking off which begins tomorrow on Tuesday, September 9th, the UN General Assembly in New York. All the while, we're seeing wars, rumors of wars, the possibility of civil war, distress of nations. All this is culminating right as these celestial events are transpiring in the heavens. I don't believe any of this is a coincidence, and we're going to get you up to par on the latest of all of this stuff happening. So let's go right now.
The following program is brought to you by friends and partners of End Time Headlines.
All right, what's going on, guys? It is a brand new week. We are in the second week of September. It is Monday. We want to welcome you to the program. This is End Time Headlines, news and headlines from a prophetic perspective. Hope everybody's had a great weekend. We know that, football season's in full gear now. This weekend we went and watched some Little League football ourselves, enjoyed the weather. I'm sore today from playing pickleball with my boys, and that's just my age showing. Nothing like your body reminding you that you're not a spring chicken anymore. But nevertheless, it always feels good to get that physical activity, and it's fun. So anyway, we've got a lot going on, guys. This week's going to be full. We say this every week. Every week is just full of events taking place. And this is definitely one that we're really going to be focused on from this point forward. Today's probably going to be one of the slower days, but once we get into tomorrow, we get into September 9th and we move forward. As many of you guys know, we're heading into that UN General Assembly. It's going to be taking place in New York, where Israel will be the focal point, being pressured by hundreds of nations to force them into a Palestinian state. And we're going to be right here. We're going to be keeping you up to par with everything that's going on. But we want to talk about today things that's already transpired, things that I believe are harbingers. And before we get started, you know the drill, guys. Hit that like button. That's going to be a blessing to us. It's going to push our visibility out there on these platforms so others can see our content and they can be able to keep up with everything we're doing as well. And also, if you enjoy our content and you wish to keep up with us here on YouTube or Rumble or wherever you may be watching from, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell notification. That's going to be a blessing to you as well. So most of you, as we said at the introduction of this, most of us know about this blood moon, and we're going to get to that in just a second, but there was other events. That's not the only events, guys, that's taking place. We had a geomagnetic storm that sparked a visible auroras across 18 states between September 1st and 2nd. Let me pull this up. Again, these are things that have happened before the blood moon. Here it is. Auroras may be visible from Alaska to Illinois as a, quote, cannibal solar storm impact could spark geomagnetic storm conditions September 1st and 2nd. Wow, what a way to kick off September. September 1st, guys, we saw earthquakes in various places. We reported on that the other day on a podcast. Then we had this taking place with this geomagnetic storm. And I looked this up, and sure enough, look at this. Check this out. I'm going to pull this over here so we can read this. Yes, strong geomagnetic storming from what they're calling a cannibal CME caused. So this did happen. The northern lights or auroras to be visible across 18 U.S. states on the night of September 1st and 2nd. So as many of us wasn't aware of this, and some people were. There was strange reports of people losing cell signals internet disruptions and whatnot. But look at this. A potent cannibal solar storm has struck Earth and could put on a spectacular northern lights display across the U.S. tonight. And again, this did take place. A fast-moving coronal mass ejection launched by a long-duration M27 flare from a sunspot AR 4199 on the 30th of August slammed into Earth's magnetic field around 5 p.m. Eastern on the September 1st. Wow. This is according to the NOAA Space Weather Prediction Center. And here's a graph that shows this is where all the impact came of the geomagnetic storm. Again, this wasn't nowhere on the level that we saw last year when that took place, and it went as far as to Florida, but this is still significant. Then of course we had this event that everybody, most of us, at least that follow our program, knows about this. But we're talking about the blood moon that was visible to billions of people across the planet, and even in Israel. Look at this: blood moon rises in the skies above Israel during total lunar eclipse. Israelis across the country stepped outside to catch a glimpse of a blood moon during a rare total lunar eclipse on Sunday evening, as did millions of people around the world. Some say billions, okay? Depending on what articles you read. The eclipse was visible across Asia and swaths of Europe and Africa. Many in Israel camped out with their families or friends to catch a glimpse of the phenomenon in the early evening hours. People in Asia, including India and China, were best placed to see Sunday's total eclipse. Now, this is interesting. People in Asia, India and China, had the best visibility of this solar eclipse. Now, while the world is gazing upon this and they are just mesmerized by this and they think it's amazing, we have to remember that, when we've talked about this many times, these blood moons are not something that is something to get excited about. These are considered to be omens. They're considered to be harbingers of wars, conflicts, and major disasters. So let's talk about this for a second. The first blood moon in this year took place on March the 13th and 14th. And consequently, this was visible across America and fell directly on Purim, as the Jewish people were celebrating the biblical account of Esther, in which they were delivered from annihilation of the hands of an enemy named Haman in the Persian Empire. Today, that's Iran, which is, again, consequently 3 months later. Fast forward 3 months after that occasion, on June 21st and 22nd, Operation Midnight Hammer took place, where Donald Trump initiated strikes on Iranian nuclear sites through a military operation. The U.S. launched precision airstrikes on 3 Iranian nuclear facilities using B-2 stealth bombers, deploying massive 30,000-pound bunker buster bombs. And this was all supported by Tomahawk missile strikes from a submarine. So look at that. You had a blood moon visible across America, falling on Purim, the same day where they commemorated the account of Esther delivering her people from the Persian, aka Iranian Empire. And we made that statement. We said that America will be directly involved because of this right here. They'll be somehow, some way, they're going to get pulled into a conflict with Iran. And literally 3 months later, the U.S. military carried out this operation on June 21st to the 22nd, bombing 3 key nuclear sites in Iran. Now listen to me. Historically, blood moon tetrads. Now when we say tetrads, it literally means, just think of a set of 4, okay, to make this simple. These have occurred during some of the truly most world-changing events directly correlated with the nation of Israel. For example, 3 tetrads stood over the last millennium, coinciding with major events for the Jewish people. They occurred from 1493 to 1494. Then there was another one at 1949 and 1950. And then there was another tetrad at 67 and 68, 1967, 68. All right, so let me say that again because this is important. Watch this. So you had a series of 4 blood moons, a tetrad, and each time these blood moons occurred, they all fell on Jewish feast days. This happened in the years 1493 to 1494, 1949 to 1950, and the year 1967 to 68. Well, did anything happen, Brother Ricky? Yes, I'm glad you asked. Because people say this all the time. Well, you doom and gloomers and you end time people, you always talk about these blood moons and this and that, and nothing ever happens. Well, in 1492, when the first tetrad appeared, the Jews were expelled from Spain after severe persecution. Also, Christopher Columbus discovered America, which would eventually become a safe haven for the Jewish people. In 1948, anything major happened in 1948? Well, of course it did. The modern state of Israel was reborn as a nation, and it fulfilled Bible prophecy from the book of Jeremiah, chapter 16, verse 15. Okay? Then, finally, in 1967, Israel recaptured their capital of Jerusalem during the Six-Day War, which many saw as a central precursor to the eventual construction of the Jewish Third Temple. The Second Temple was destroyed by the Romans in 70 AD. And then we had another blood moon that took place that literally happened right before the whole Gaza conflict exploded. And then you had the October invasion by Hamas that went into Israel. We already know the atrocities that took place then. And then consequently, fast forward, now we're on September 7th, which was yesterday, as the Jewish people are in the midst of Teshuvah, the season of repentance on the Hebrew calendar, and they're on the brink of embracing the new Jewish year that's coming in, the Jewish New Year. So then that leads us to yesterday, September 7th, as the Jewish people are in the midst of commemorating Teshuvah. This is the 40 days of repentance on the Hebrew calendar, and they're about to embark in the Jewish New Year called Rosh Hashanah or Rosh Hashanah, again, however you want to pronounce that. On the Gregorian calendar, we kick this off on January 1st. But in Israel, they do this during the feast of Rosh Hashanah. And this year it falls on September 22nd to the 24th. So you've got, again, September 7th, you have a blood moon visible over Israel in the midst of Teshuvah on the brink of Rosh Hashanah, and literally 2 days prior to the UN General Assembly set to kick off this Tuesday in New York. Ladies and gentlemen, that is a sign. It's an omen. It's a harbinger, whatever you want to call it. That is. Now, here's the key, though. This blood moon was not just visible in Israel, but it was also visible mainly across Asia, China, India. And I believe this is a sign. I believe it's a warning. And I'm going to show you what I'm talking about in just a moment. But this is not the only thing that happened. Many don't realize this, but while this is all happening, so you had the solar storm that produced auroras across 18 states. You had the blood moon that transpired during this time frame. We also, right now, we're having a planet. They call this a parade of planets, and this will be visible all the way into September of this month. And this parade of planets involves 5 planets: Venus, Jupiter, Saturn, Neptune, and Uranus. And all of these are, again, in what they call a parade of planets. And this will not happen again until October of 2028. Now, when I saw all this happen, I said to myself, okay, let's look at the track records. Let's look at the patterns and see what typically happens when these celestial events take place in the heavens. Again, there is a track record. The ancients understood this. Ancient empires understood this. Even in the times of Jesus and the disciples, they understood this, okay? They understood that these heavenly signs are harbingers or omens of war, distress, perplexity, and chaos. I don't know how else to put this here. So we have to ask our question. We have to ask a question here. Are we seeing the makings of such an event? Well, I believe we are. Now, I realize a lot of people may not know who this is, but there was a former employee. He was a former host on the show of InfoWars with Alex Jones, but his name is David Knight. Now, somebody sent me this, and I read over this, and I was like, that's it. That's it. And I knew that this was significant. I want to show you something here real quick. Let me pull this up. I want to read to you his tweet, okay? I'm going to read this really slow. We're going to break this down, and I'm going to show you how all this is coming together. Quote, "It's fourth turning time." Now, we'll talk about what that means in just a minute. I've said this one will likely be a combination of the previous 3 fourth turnings: World War, Civil War, and Revolutionary War. I said in 2020 that Trump was serving the globalist agenda of chaos and takedown. And by the way, there's this whole, speaking of Civil War, there's pretty much a whole civil war breaking out among InfoWars and Alex Jones with some of his former hosts and co-workers and whatnot, because many of them are having this, what they call this MAGA falling out, because a lot of people are not seeing eye to eye, and they're not on board, and they're not approving of everything that Trump's done or doing right now. So there's this whole civil war among the InfoWars camp. But let me go on here. So David Knight says, "I said in 2020 that Trump was serving the globalist agenda of chaos and takedown, picking up where he left off with his erratic, destructive tariffs against even countries we had surplus with. He says, now it appears he's desperate to start both a civil war and war with Venezuela while funding Ukraine as well as Israel genocide." Now, look, guys, I know this is real political hot button right here. I don't agree with everything he just said here, but I do want to say this. Again, I don't agree with everything he said here, but there's something I want to pull out here. Number one, I said in the beginning, and some of y'all will remember this, we have the receipts on this as far as podcasts. This is all archived in our podcast. Before this last election, I said if Trump wins the election based on his vice presidential pick, which was J.D. Vance, who has a military background, I'm going to go ahead and go out on a limb and say to you that it is likely that God will permit or allow America to enter into some type of military conflict based on his vice president pick. Because you got to remember, guys, we think we're actually, and again, some people are still gullible enough to believe this, but if you really actually believe that your votes count, again, if you want to vote and it gives you a clear conscience, that's fine. I was there at one time, so I'm not trying to belittle or be condescending here, because I was there at one time too until I felt like the Lord opened my eyes to this. But whatever clears your conscience, if you need to vote, go do that. But I don't believe in the end that what we actually vote for matters as much as who they want to be in positions of power and leadership and authority to fulfill an agenda. Now, that's on a humanistic level, but we know above that, we have principalities, powers, rulers of darkness, and spiritual wickedness in heavenly places. That's Ephesians chapter 6. So there is demonic powers controlling these leaders. Okay, but what about, let's go above that. If we go above that, then we have the book of Daniel that tells us that it is God who sets up kings and sets down kings, ultimately for his glory and his purpose. So here's what I'm trying to relay to you. And it's this, that everything is happening just as God has ordained. Now, can the actions of people to repentance and turning back to God, can it bring a reprieve? Sure. But can it stop Bible prophecy. No, it will not. We cannot stop Bible prophecy. So once the fullness of times and events happen, they will be fulfilled. But there can be delays as far as reprieves. Okay? And we've went over this multiple times, guys. 2 Chronicles 7:14 is the very blueprint for that. That if my people do this and do that and do this, there will be a reaction. God himself said, then I will hear from heaven and I will heal their land. This happened to the city of Nineveh. God was willing to spare Sodom and Gomorrah if he could find 10 righteous in the city, but he could not find 10 righteous. Okay, that's how wicked it was. So I understand that the people, us, the church, the ecclesia, if we seek God, we fast, we pray and strive for revival, that God can indeed bring a reprieve to nations, bring a reprieve and relent from judgment. Okay? But again, ultimately, Bible prophecy cannot be stopped and the wheels are in motion. So one of the principles is 1 Thessalonians chapter 5. There's a principle. For when they shall say peace and safety, then sudden destruction shall come upon them. I've said this for a while. We've been in an era, or a season, I should say, of peace and safety. You've been hearing this from the lips of all kinds of people. But you know we all know what's coming after that, sudden destruction. And I believe, listen to me, I believe that's why God, according to Genesis chapter 1, has set up these heavenly signs in heaven for signs and seasons, harbingers, warnings. But the average individual is not going to understand this. They're not going to get this. They're not going to discern this. Only the sons of Issachar. And I'm talking about those who understand and know the times and seasons and were able to act accordingly. That's why we're watchmen. That's why we sound the alarm. Now I want to go back to this because I know a lot of people, we probably lost a lot of people right here because of this statement that David Knight said. Again, I want to preface this. I don't agree with all of David Knight's assertions here and things he's saying, especially about Israel and about, and how he's worded this. But there's one thing that stands out to me that I do want to tell you about. And now, let me pull this back up, that I think is intriguing. And it's this statement right here, the fourth turning. This really got my wheels spinning. Now, where is he getting this? What's this term mean? The fourth turn. I need y'all to really give me your undivided attention right here because we're going somewhere with this. The fourth turning is a concept from a book called The Fourth Turning. It's an American Prophecy, 1997, by William Strauss and Neil Howe. It's part of their, quote, broader generational theory. Another term of this is the Secolum cycle, which suggests, listen to this, that history moves in reoccurring cycles lasting somewhere between 80 and 100 years, roughly the span of a human life. Each one of these cycles is divided into 4 turnings or seasons of history lasting 20 to 25 years. Now listen to this, pay attention to this. Number 1, we had the high turning. This is a period of strong institutions, social order, and collective confidence. Many believe this happened post-World War II America in the 1950s. Okay? Then we have what was called the awakening turning. This is a time when society begins to challenge established norms, emphasizing personal freedom, spiritual renewal, and cultural upheaval. They believe this happened between 1960s and 1970s. Then we had the unraveling turning, and this is another turning, the unraveling, they call this. This is where institutions are weakened, individualism grows, trust declines, and society becomes fragmented. They put the dates of that 1980s to 2000s. Okay? Then we enter into the fourth and final turning, which is a decisive era of upheaval, conflict, or transformation, listen to me really carefully, when old systems collapse and a new order is born. This is often marked by wars, revolutions, or economic crisis. Let me read that one more time, because think about everything we've talked about here and put it all, and I think some of y'all is going to start getting it. We're putting it together. Again, there's these four turnings. We went to the high turning, the awakening, the unravel, and now some believe that we're entering in to the fourth turning, which is a decisive era of upheaval, conflict, or transformation, when old systems collapse and a new order, interesting term here, is born. This is often marked by wars, revolutions, or economic crisis. Now, according to Strauss and Ho, America has been in a fourth turning since around 2008. Now, think about who came into office in 2008, Barack Obama, and what was his whole campaign? It was about change, right? We're gonna change America, and then that was also consequently the year that we had the Great Recession. They see this as a period that will last until the late 2020s or early 2030s. Will it though? And here's that 2030 mark again. And this will culminate in a dramatic resolution, either renewal and rebuilding or deep decline. Now, in their book, they laid out three fourth turnings that's already took place. One was the American Revolution, 1770s and 1790s. The next one was Civil War in the 1860s. And the third one was Great Depression in World War II, 1930s and 1940s. Listen to this really carefully. Each one of these fourth turnings led to collapse of old systems and the rise of a new national order. Wow. Now, we're being told that we are entering into what? What have you heard all the time? The age of the golden age. We're entering in. It's time for the golden age.
This will truly be the golden age of America. That's what we have to have.
And we know what that consists of. We saw this on display the other night. There was Trump, who is our current sitting president, with all the technocrats, including Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, and they all want a new national order or the golden age that is going to be centered around super AI. This is going to transform the world. We're going to see the collapse of old systems and the rise of something new. Now, here, when I read this and when I was studying this, I immediately thought of a meeting that just took place in China, where you had China's President Xi with India's Modi, you had Putin, and you have Kim Jong-un, all challenging the U.S. And some journalists, some reports even said that they are forming a new world order.
United against Trump. Leaders from some of the world's largest powers right now joining forces to take on the White House. And the images are striking. Russia's Vladimir Putin shaking hands and laughing with Chinese President Xi Jinping and India's Prime Minister Modi. At one point, even holding hands with Modi. The show of unity in China clearly designed to send a message to Trump and what Xi calls his, quote, bullying practices. The trio is notably about to be joined by another U.S. adversary, North Korea's Kim Jong-un. This is a picture of him in his bulletproof train, reportedly just now crossing into China. Kim steps onto the world stage fresh off a tour of his country's newest missile factory, one that North Korea claims is a cornerstone of its military expansion. A military that, according to Ukraine, is on the verge of sending up to 30,000 troops to Eastern Europe to provide Russia with more manpower. And as Trump watches these world leaders gather without him, he is lashing out at one. India's Narendra Modi, writing online that America's relationship with India has been a, quote, totally one-sided disaster. And yet The one leader who is evading Trump's ire is Vladimir Putin, a man whose military launched a round of overnight attacks on Ukraine yet again. Also, the man who went before cameras today attempting to rewrite history, insisting that his invasion is all Ukraine's fault.
I will remind you that this crisis was created not as a result of Russia attacking Ukraine. It emerged as a result of a coup d'etat in Ukraine that was provoked and supported by the West.
Trump's prolonged silence on Putin's actions may also be emboldening the Russian leader. We're now learning a plane carrying the European Union's top official was targeted by the Kremlin. Shortly before landing, we're told the jet's GPS system was jammed by Russian technology. Ursula von der Leyen's plane was able to land safely using paper maps. The EU's top leader, we should point out, is a staunch defender of Ukraine.
And this new order that they're forming, their whole initiative is to, you ready for this? Is to destroy the West, bring down the West so that this new order could rise to power. Wow, guys. Is anybody paying attention to what's going on? Now, you may be listening to this, well, Brother Ricky, that's kind of stretching it. You know, I don't know about that. Well, I'm not done yet. Let's go on here. Are we entering into an era, an age, a season of upheaval, chaos, war, conflict? Well, right now, as we're speaking, Trump has deployed National Guard troops in Washington, D.C., L.A., and now he's already looking at Chicago, New Orleans, Baltimore, San Francisco, Portland, New York, Oakland, all of this. Federal judges are trying to come against him. They're ruling that the deployment of those, at least in L.A., have violated laws and military involvement. Some are saying that this is the formation of a police state right in front of our eyes. We're seeing all this. In fact, there was an article. Let me pull this up. Most of you guys saw this. But this post right here that you see, this Chipocalypse Now, that Trump posted on his Truth Social page, spurred absolute chaos, meltdown. They call it, quote, unhinged and anti-American. Critics erupt over Trump's AI-generated threat. Donald Trump critics were beside themselves over the president's Saturday Truth Social post that featured AI reimagining of the war movie Apocalypse Now, which he rebranded Chipocalypse Now. Quote, I love the smell of deportations in the morning, Trump posted. Chicago about to find out why it's called the Department of War. And he's referencing his recent rebranding of the Department of Defense, calling it the Department of War. Wow. Now let me pull this away before people lose their minds. Do these cities have major crime problems? Yes. Guys, even in North Carolina on a train, an innocent woman was stabbed to death right out in public on the train by a man that stabbed her in the neck, killed her, murdered her on the train, walked off the train, blood dripping from the knife, mainstream media silent over it. I am not oblivious to this. I understand this. I see this. But I am trying to speak to you in prophetic terms and not political terms. You guys have got to take off your political lenses. Listen to me. And put on your prophetic lens and listen to what I'm telling you. We're entering into a time of upheaval, conflict, war, distress, all of this. It's happening. Wake up. Meanwhile, we have this. So you've got some say that what's happening with the deployment of the troops of the National Guard to these cities could spill over into civil war. Now, do I believe that? I don't know. I don't think it's got to that point yet, but you could see how this could become a firestorm and just get more and more and more intense. Plus, I also remember men of God like David Wilkerson who said, and I'll never forget this, they said they saw fires in the streets of New York.
God has always judged societies. We're being slapped. I don't know why America doesn't wait. We're being slapped on the wrist. California is being shaken from one end to another, earthquakes, black economic hole. We're having tornadoes, we're having hurricanes and billions of dollars, and nobody's listening. Everybody says, well, God wouldn't do that. These are love calls from God. These are mercy calls. Wake up before true judgment comes for having turned away from everything that is righteous and holy. I stood in this pulpit a few weeks ago, and it took every bit of Holy Ghost courage he could give me to say what I had to say, but I have felt this for weeks. I believe that New York City is in for 30 days of chastisement, such as America's never seen, any American city. I see at least 1,000 fires burning in every borough, every business that's on the brink right now deciding whether to move out of the city will move. There's a hemorrhage already, and the economic base is collapsing. We're a third world city already. I don't care what Mayor Dinkins says, it's a third world city. We have a murder every hour on the hour now, major crime every 20 seconds. This is Murder City, and I believe that we're going to see such chaos and anarchy in New York City coming. I don't know when, but I don't think it's too far off, and I don't know what's going to set it off. There'll be no planes, trains, anything coming in this city for probably 2 weeks. And all those who have money and are able will escape. And New York City, our crown city, because of its absolute rebellion against God, its absolute sinfulness and wickedness, is going to be chastised. And this is God. He could have sent hydrogen bombs from Russia before that society collapsed and wiped us off the map. But no, he gives us warnings. He slaps our wrist and said, look, I'm talking to you. And that's what AIDS is. It's a message. All of these calamities, they're messages. And God's saying, wake up.
We could be on the brink, and I say we, I'm talking about America, could be on the brink of a war with Venezuela. Look at this. Maduro vows to, quote, defend Venezuela's sovereignty as tensions with the U.S. escalate. All right, President Maduro has vowed to defend Venezuela's sovereignty as tensions rise over the deployment of U.S. warships in the Caribbean. He has urged Trump to engage in dialogue to avoid conflict. The remarks late Friday came 3 days after the Trump administration said U.S. forces carried out a strike in the Caribbean, sinking a boat it claimed was from a Venezuelan gang smuggling drugs to the U.S. The strike killed 11 people, and the American count has been questioned by Caracas. Venezuela is always ready for dialogue, but we demand respect, Maduro said in a speech at a military base in Caracas. None of our differences justify a high-impact military conflict in South America. And all this is happening, guys. Now, all of this began in August of last month when the U.S. initiated a major naval deployment near Venezuela, including missile destroyers, an amphibious assault ship, a guided missile cruiser, and a nuclear submarine. Again, the official narrative here was targeting drug traffickers and cartels. But now this thing has escalated because on September 2nd of this month, there was an airstrike on that vessel in the Caribbean. We know that. And then there's also Venezuelan planes that entered into airspace that was forbidden, and Trump has warned about that. And he sent 10 fighter jets over on top of everything else that has happened. Trump has declared that any Venezuelan aircraft posing a threat will be, quote, shot down. Meanwhile, President Maduro responded by mobilizing millions of militia members, denouncing the U.S. buildup as a threat to sovereignty and warning Venezuela would enter armed struggle if they are attacked. What am I talking about? I'm talking about you have what could be the earmarks or the beginnings of civil war in America on U.S. soil. Now we could be engaged in a conflict with Venezuela, a military conflict. Then, in the midst of all that, Trump renamed the Department of Defense the Department of War. He posted AI-generated apocalypse now imagery, and he warns Chicago that war could be coming to Chicago, in the streets of Chicago. Then you have this. Let's just move on. We've got more. Meanwhile, in the United Kingdom, look at this. Critics warn that unrest in the UK could boil over into civil war. Civil unrest has reached a boiling point The situation is so dire that some commentators have even raised the specter of civil war. Prominent voices across the potential spectrum are sounding the alarm, pointing to escalating tensions that are shaking the very fabric of British society. In recent weeks, demonstrators over migrant housing have erupted into violence. And again, this is a prelude, guys, to what's coming to America, and already is on some levels here, with one protest outside an asylum hotel turning chaotic as rocks and eggs were hurled at police officers, leaving several injured and dozens arrested. Meanwhile, riots in Northern Ireland earlier this summer left more than 100 officers hurt, underscoring how quickly local grievances can spiral into nationwide unrest. The British are known for alarmism, and the fact that such warnings are coming from respected public figures should not be taken lightly. At the heart of the turmoil, are deep cultural and political fractures compounded by debates over immigration, identity, and the future direction of the nation. All right, now this is not a coincidence. And while that was happening, yesterday across the UK, look at this. Phones across the United Kingdom blared out an alarm as the government tested its emergency alert system for the second time. Here's what's interesting. This alert system was called, quote, the Armageddon alarm, and it was sent to all 4G and 5G enabled phones and tablets. The alarm was designed to deliver, quote, life-saving information in times of crisis, such as during a wildfire or storm, or civil unrest, war, threats, right? Meanwhile, let's go back to the U.S. Trump just gave an ultimatum, another ultimatum to Hamas, quote, accept deal and release hostages or, quote, pay the consequences. All right, President Trump issued what he's calling his, quote, last warning to Hamas to accept his deal and release the remaining hostages or face the consequences. Everyone wants the hostages home. Everyone wants this war to end. Trump wrote on Truth Social, the Israelis have accepted my terms, and it's time for Hamas to accept as well. It's interesting how this guy is just calling the shots, isn't it? The Israelis have accepted my terms, and now it's time for Hamas to accept it as well. Quote, I have warned Hamas about the consequences of not accepting. He continued, this is my last warning. There will not be another one. What does this mean? Are we going to see another military conflict in the Middle East carried out by the U.S., or will Israel do this, or will it be both? Last month, Trump said the remaining hostages would only be returned when Hamas is confronted and destroyed. This sounds like a military threat to me, guys. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Hamas was citing alleged progress in ceasefire talks. In July, the U.S. and Israel pulled negotiators from Qatar, and Trump's envoy Steve Witkoff said Hamas showed a, quote, lack of desire to reach a ceasefire and was likely not negotiating in good faith. Last month, on the 26th of August, Witkoff told Fox News' Brett Baer on special report that he and Trump wanted the hostages home that week. Quote, there's been a deal on the table for the last 6 or 7 weeks that would have released 10 of the hostages out of the 20 who we think are alive. He said nothing that he believes Hamas is 100% to blame for the holdup. Witkoff did not elaborate, on what is delaying the hostages' return nearly 2 years after they were taken on the 7th of October during the attack in 2023. Man, I cannot believe that's been 2 years ago. Attack on Israel. 50 hostages continue to be held by Hamas, only 20 of them who are assessed still to be alive. Trump previously predicted in late August that there would be a, quote, conclusive end to the war in Gaza within the next 2 to 3 weeks, though he did not say how this would be accomplished. Meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has insisted that only a comprehensive ceasefire, one that ensures the return of all hostages and ends the war on Israel's terms, will be considered. Israel is preparing a new offensive in Gaza targeting Hamas. This is according to the IDF as it expanded ground operations under Operation Gideon's Chariots 2. IDF spokesperson warned Palestinians in parts of Gaza City to leave ahead of the expected escalation. The warning included a map marking the area and highlighting one building the IDF planned to strike, citing the presence of mosque terrorist infrastructure inside or nearby. So it sounds like, guys, at least from this report, that Israel is going to carry out this military operation with Trump's orders, along with Benjamin Netanyahu in agreement. All right, then I want to show you this. Look at this. Meanwhile, the U.S. Treasury Secretary says that the U.S. and European Union, quote, must partner to collapse the Russian economy. All right, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent signaled Sunday the U.S. is open to partnering with European countries to, quote, impose more sanctions on countries that buy Russian oil in an attempt to, quote, collapse the Russian economy, and brushed aside concerns that the U.S. was entering a recession. Let me read what he says here. Quote, we are in a race now between how long can the Ukrainian military hold up versus how long can the Russian economy hold up. And if the U.S. and the European Union can come in, do more sanctions, secondary tariffs on the countries that buy Russian oil, the Russian economy will be in total collapse. Now, how do you think Putin's going to respond to that? And this will bring Putin to the table. Will it, though? I want to know your thoughts on this one, guys. Let me know your comments in the chat, in the comments. What will Putin's response be if the U.S. does indeed partner with the EU to, quote, collapse the Russian economy? Will Putin respond aggressively? Will he respond with military action? Could we see a conflict, a war break out between the United States and Russia? Meanwhile, Putin has said that any foreign troops deployed into Ukraine would be legitimate targets. So at least with his words, he's not playing around here. President Putin said last week that any foreign troops deployed to Ukraine, particularly while its invasion was still ongoing, would be, quote, considered legitimate targets by Moscow's forces. Putin's comments comes hours after European leaders repledged their commitment to a potential peacekeeping force, a prospect that Moscow has repeatedly described as, quote, unacceptable. Let me read what he said here. If any troops appear there, especially now while fighting is ongoing, we assume that they will be legitimate targets. He said this during a panel at Eastern Economic Forum in the far eastern Russian city of
Vladivostok.
There you go. Putin also dismissed the idea of peacekeeping forces in Ukraine after a final peace deal, saying, quote, no one should doubt that Moscow would comply with a treaty to halt its 3.5-year full-scale invasion of its neighbor. So Putin is not interested in peace. I think Trump has finally woke up to this. And his own wife, Melania, said, basically, I'm just rephrasing this, that she noticed on social media some tweets by Putin and some things that were said, and she basically, in no uncertain terms, told Trump that he's making a laughing stock out of you. He is not interested in peace. It's a joke, guys. He is not interested in peace, and here's yet another sign of this. Now, meanwhile, this happened yesterday. I don't know if anybody saw this, but undersea cables that carry internet access across Asia and the Middle East were cut in the Red Sea. According to a report from NBC News, undersea cables cuts in the Red Sea disrupted internet access in parts of Asia and the Middle East, though it wasn't immediately clear what caused the incident. There has been concern about the cables being targeted in a Red Sea campaign by Yemen's Houthi rebels, which the rebels described as an effort to pressure Israel to end its war on Hamas in the Gaza Strip. But the Houthis have, quote, denied attacking the lines in the past. These undersea cables are one of the backbones of the internet, along with satellite connections and land-based cables. Typically, internet service providers have multiple access points and reroute traffic if one fails, though it can slowly down access for users. All right, meanwhile, President Xi of China says, look at this headline, world faces peace or war. Wow. Let me say that again. President Xi Jinping of China, in a statement, said the world is now facing peace or war. All of this as Putin and Kim Jong-un join him for a military parade. Let's read a little of this. President Xi Jinping said the world was facing a choice between peace or war as he held China's largest ever military parade, joined by Vladimir Putin and Kim Jong-un in a show of defiance to the West. Now, guys, this is interesting because we did a podcast on this. I don't know if you guys saw this, but go watch our archives where we talked about this could be the makings of the kings of the East mentioned in the book of Revelation. Anyway, Putin and King Kim, the authoritarian leaders of Russia and North Korea, were among dozens of world leaders who attended the parade, a massive display of military hardware and personnel orchestrated to mark the 80th anniversary of the end of the Second World War, which China calls the War of Resistance against Japanese aggression. Quote, today humanity is again faced with the choice of peace or war, dialogue, look at this, or confrontation, win or zero sum, Xi told the crowd of more than 50,000 spectators, adding that the Chinese people, quote, firmly stand on the right side of history. He went on to say that China was a great nation that is never intimidated by any bullies, and an apparent veiled reference to the U.S. and its allies, and warned that China was, quote, unstoppable. Now look at this. All of this is happening following this convergence of celestial signs in the heavens, blood moons, planet parades, geomagnetic storms. And by the way, we have another one. We're not even going to cover this on this podcast, but we've got this strange, mysterious interstellar object that's coming also this fall. And I don't want to get into that because we'll probably do a whole other podcast on that. I want to give you the latest update on that, but it'll take too long to cover that on here, so I don't want to pull that in here. But look at this. This is a headline from Michael Snyder of the Most Important News. Quote, while the peace conference on September 22nd could cause a catastrophic war to erupt in the Middle East. Let's read a little bit of what he blogged here. A very dangerous geopolitical chess match is playing out right in front of our eyes. As I discussed yesterday, France and Saudi Arabia will co-chair the conference on the two-state solution at the UN on September the 22nd. By the way, it kicks off tomorrow. The goal of this conference is to create an unstoppable wave of international momentum toward the creation of a Palestinian state. Israeli officials are very upset about this conference, and they are considering annexing large portions of the West Bank in response. If that happens, Israel's Islamic neighbors will go absolutely berserk, and a catastrophic war could break out in the Middle East. Wow. Is anyone paying attention to this? This is remarkable. Snyder went on and said, let's hope that cooler heads prevail because we are rapidly approaching a point of no return. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're definitely in perilous times. Matthew 24, Mark 13, Luke 21, all warn of wars, rumors of wars, nation against nation, kingdom against kingdom. He talked about there will be distress on the earth, distress of nations with perplexity. Okay, we're seeing these conflicts mounting. And we just covered all we've got you up to par with all of these possible war fronts taking place all across the globe. And the U.S. is stretching itself thin, militarily speaking. Venezuela, all the National Guard troops and whatnot is being dispersed to all these cities in America. Now, who knows how we're going to be involved in the Middle East with Gaza and with Hamas. We're making threats to Russia. All of this stuff. And if you guys know history, here's what's interesting is the Roman Empire did the same thing. They stretched their military thin across the globe, and it ended up causing them to collapse. The Roman Empire, which is a parallel of the U.S. of America, collapsed from within. They were never destroyed from without. They completely collapsed. They deteriorated from within and collapsed. And isn't it interesting, as we pointed out in here, that guys, we're having a conversation today. Y'all can let me know your thoughts on this. But if we truly are, if there is any credence to what these gentlemen wrote in their observation of their book, of the four turnings, If we're now entering into another fourth turning, then it is going to be marked by a system that we know collapsing. Could it be the American empire? As we know, are we seeing the beginnings of the American empire collapsing, which has been going on for a while, but it has to collapse in order for a new order to be born. And it will be marked by, again, wars, revolutions, and economic crisis. This has to happen in order to, again, as we pointed out here, there has to be a rise of a national or a new national order. Now, here's the terrifying part. I believe this is the final one. I really do. I believe that this must happen. I'm not trying to terrify anyone, but I believe America has to cease from being an empire in order to give way for the rise of the final beast system of Revelation 13, the kingdom of the beast, the eighth and final empire that John the Revelator saw and he talked about. And if I'm right on that, and this is going to happen, then we have to have the formation of the seventh empire, which is where you're going to get those 10 kingdoms from. Because the Antichrist emerges up out of those 10 kings. So keep an eye out on the European Union, the formation of this revised Roman Empire, or that's one camp. The other camp could be watch for the Abraham Accords and these Middle Eastern nations coming into this. And could the 10 kings rise out of that? I don't know. Look, I'm not going to be dogmatic and say this camp's right or that camp's right. All I'm saying is I'm going to leave you with Luke 21:28, as I always do. When you begin to see all of these things coming to pass, it's time to look up and lift up your heads, because surely your redemption is drawing near. Guys, give us a like. Please help us out here on YouTube, Rumble. Hit that subscribe button, hit that bell notification. You guys listen by Apple or by Spotify. We appreciate you as well. And if you enjoy our content, be sure to give us a good review. Listen, if you don't have our free app, pick it up today. Download it, hit yes to push notifications, and you'll be squared away with all of our content, podcasts, breaking news, prophecy updates, headlines. Everything will be right at your fingertips. And as always, if you love our ministry and our content and you enjoy what we put out here week after week after week, and you like to pray about becoming a monthly partner, you can do that two different ways. You can give electronically through the app, or you can give by check or money order right there on your screen at End Time Headlines, P.O. Box 1391, Monroe, Georgia 30655. So guys, we're going to sign off for tonight. Again, you know the drill. Lord willing, we'll be right back here tomorrow night, September 9th, 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central, for another great podcast. So until we see you guys on the next one, I pray the Lord bless you, may He keep you, and may His countenance shine upon you. We'll see you soon.
Thank you for listening to the End Time Headlines podcast. We pray that you've been blessed and equipped by today's message. For more information about how you can help partner with our ministry, please visit endtimeheadlines.org.